While the topic of mental health has been present for quite some time now, the attention it's received has increased exponentially in recent years. There are plenty of reasons for this, but to keep things simple, let's just say that life isn't getting any easier to deal with. Here in the West, a lot of focus has gone towards self-care, including positive reinforcement around the idea of seeking therapy, as well as being open about personal issues. Unfortunately, Japan's approach to mental health is quite a bit different. In general, the country likes to operate with performance in mind. Students are constantly kept busy, and workers tend to treat their jobs like a second home. This is great for efficiency, but can also have adverse effects. Given how seriously education is pushed, it isn't surprising that a lot of teens feel a tremendous amount of pressure to keep up. When it comes to the workplace culture, young adults can easily become discouraged when they realize just how much is expected of them. There isn't much room for discussion in regards to mental health, as it's seen more as an excuse than a serious issue. Eventually, certain individuals will hit a breaking point, resulting in various outcomes. One of these is complete withdrawal from society, also known as hikikomori syndrome. Another is even more extreme, with plenty of people simply deciding to give up on life. Approaching from a different angle, a new alternative has become more prevalent, acting as a movement for change. The term Menhera first appeared on the Japanese message board 2chan, referring to individuals that deal with mental health issues. A community started to form around this idea, extending into its own style of art and music. The movement got a particularly large boost after the artist Ezaki Bisuko joined in with his own contributions. Known as Menhera-chan, this manga heroine has the ability to become a magical girl, but only after committing an act of self-harm. Featuring 20 chapters in a large collection of short comics, the series was Bisuko's way of coping with the intense struggles he faced regarding university. Eventually, the clothing style known as Yami Kawaii emerged as a continuation of the movement. Combining bright pastels with darker elements, the overall look was certainly eye-catching. Menhera fashion adds a few additional pieces to keep the display centered around mental health. Specific items may include pills, bandages, razor blades, eye patches, syringes, and more. The idea is to incorporate things that relate to medical properties, as well as personal struggle. While the stigma of discussing mental health is still present in Japan, this fashion has become a way to silently fight back and bring awareness to the issue. Elements of the Menhera movement can be found in various places, which brings us to the focus of this video. The rest of the script was written before I discovered this additional context, and I'm glad I was able to find out more. Having my own struggles, mental health is something I really care about, and it's great to hear that Japan is making progress towards recognizing these problems. Keep this theme in mind as we go forward, as the next segment is a perfect example of why it's so important to take care of yourself. Welcome to the EmoCosine Trilogy. Donghoon Shin, otherwise known as EmoCosine, is a composer and DJ from South Korea. Having music featured in a variety of rhythm games, I unknowingly came across one of his tracks more recently. I love rhythm games, and while my main obsession is DJ Max, I'd been looking for an opportunity to jump back into Muse Dash. This last December, I did just that, and found a certain song named Cutter. The cover art made me curious, leading me to discover an extremely catchy track. I decided to check YouTube to see if there was an individual upload for it, and luckily, a full music video had already been posted. As the title gave me some idea of what to expect, it was unsurprising when the content ended up being somewhat dark. Interestingly enough, there were two additional parts that continued the story with similar themes. Made by a graphic artist going by Demae, this trio of music videos is very well done, especially for having a more minimalistic approach to the visuals. Being hooked on the music, I watched the videos countless times. However, with each viewing, more elements of the narrative caught my attention. While various parts are relatively straightforward, the way they tie together paints a much more tragic tale than I initially thought. Underneath energetic tracks and cute art lies a story about an innocent girl that loses everything. As the events are open to interpretation, feel free to take my analysis with a grain of salt. In fact, if you have different takes on certain scenes, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. The song links will also be in the description if you'd like to check them out for yourself. The first track, Cutter, starts by introducing the main character, a nameless schoolgirl who remains the focus throughout the videos. Surrounded by sparkles and pretty explosions, you can make the assumption that she's experiencing the euphoric feeling of love, particularly her first love. Maintaining her innocence, the girl has mostly clean white features, accented by a large beating heart. The screen then fills with numerous office supplies, including things that could be useful for classwork, presumably making herself a project to work on. She willingly goes through changes for the sake of the one she she cares about. Cutting away the unnecessary parts, she aims to please however she can. Nothing matters as long as she continues to feel the intoxicating affection throughout her body. Adding, erasing, covering, and trimming, the work in progress is nearly perfect. Unfortunately, despite all of the effort, a betrayal ensues, leaving her heartbroken. Her former thoughts of love now weigh her down, crushing her from the inside. The internal damage manifests itself as blood coming to the surface, but things quickly move into a downward spiral. The girl is then shown being pierced by the tools that had been so helpful initially. While you could say this is metaphorical damage, it's very much implied that she's committing self-harm. There's a point in between where the young woman tries to mend the heartbreak, but the pain is still too strong. The repair eventually manages to stick, but a sense of denial refuses to accept the lie. Regardless, the student picks herself back up, renewing the love that was lost. Sporting darker clothes and hair, the intense feelings still linger. As a stapler and tape roll do damage control, the target in question comes into view. Given what happens in later entries, this object feels like a symbol of innocence. Briefly staying intact, it quickly gets shattered to pieces, then repairs itself as fast as possible. Destroyed again within moments, it's apparent that things will never be the same. Forcing a smile through her tears, the girl is ready to give love another chance, despite the emotional baggage she now carries. Pushing reason to the side, her infatuation returns, presumably forgiving her boyfriend or discovering a new fixation. Having read quite a few doujins, it's pretty clear what this look signifies. Injecting a healthy dose of self-medication, the heart carries on for another day. Unfortunately, that same medicine becomes a poison when applied elsewhere. These doubts only compound, knowing deep down that the metaphorical pills are only so compatible. Nevertheless, the girl holds on to the hope that things will get better, taking the necessary dosage. Surrounded by the same fluffy background from the beginning, the student gently fades away. However, the reason for this could very well be from blood loss. Not only is it seen pooling next to her, but a shot of a certain tool reveals the potential cause. The ending of the song even plays into this, with what sounds like an emergency vehicle siren blending into the background. And with that, part 1 draws to a close. Acting as a brutal introduction to first love, the rocky sequence isn't shy when it comes to showing instability. Unfortunately, it only gets worse from here. The second track, Love Kills You, shows our protagonist in much better shape. While a bloody bandage and a tear display a bit of pain, she's gone back to her default appearance. Holding an even bigger heart this time around, the girl's infatuation has gotten stronger. Given the lack of patchwork on the large organ, it's likely that she's found someone brand new that hasn't let her down yet, but it's impossible to know for sure. Going on to showcase a number of different household items, it's implied that the student is now living with the person in question, embracing the role of caretaker. Cooking, cleaning, and tidying are the new jobs of the girl in charge. Showing a glass of wine with a heart, we can assume that things get a bit sexual. Oddly, from here, everything takes a strange turn. A seemingly unrelated blood bag slowly drains itself. The previously inviting alcohol gets injected full of syringes, spilling onto the floor. The symbol of innocence once again falls apart at the seams. The large heart becomes cracked, with both it and the girl smashing to pieces. Shortly after, a rain of knives and scissors pierce most of the objects we've seen up to this point. The lone exception is the face of a baby. Following this, the sharp instruments stab a very specific area of the girl's body. Afterwards, the student is shown receiving a large amount of blood. Another symbol for the infant appears, but after receiving its share of the abuse, it crumbles to pieces in moments. It's my understanding that the young woman got pregnant, then either suffered a miscarriage or was persuaded to get an abortion. It's not entirely clear, but there are a few reasons why I believe either one could be plausible. A miscarriage can be caused by various factors. Consuming alcohol is one of them. If the couple wasn't careful about it, or was unaware of the pregnancy in general, the results may have led to this outcome. Not only that, but anemia is another thing that can complicate a pregnancy. While it's relatively common for some women to experience this, the real problem comes if the person deals with severe anemia. Given the level of self-harm present in the series so far, it's fairly likely that the girl's body couldn't handle the strain. This would also explain her receiving so much blood blood all at once. The needles may even give the idea that a clinic tried to save the infant. In the case of abortion, it's entirely possible that when the boyfriend found out about the child, he didn't want anything to do with it. While not seen, family pressure could have also tied into this situation, with them against the idea of giving birth for multiple reasons. After the process, hemorrhaging or another issue could have resulted in needing a blood transfusion. Whatever the case may be, the baby didn't make it. This results in a violent reaction regarding the things in the girl's home life. Potentially excited about a product of her and her boyfriend's love, the perfect environment is now forever tainted. Covered in new bandages and left with a severed heart, the student is desperate to hold on. Sadly, it seems that she doesn't have the strength. With the stapler and tape dispenser from the first part now empty, the only thing left to do is pile on the self-medication. The symbol of innocence reappears, getting slashed and repaired just like before. However, this time, the medical situation weighs her down further. I can only imagine how awful it is to experience something like this, and the remaining imagery showcases just that. The loss becomes infused into the surroundings, starting with self-harm being committed with one of the formerly happy home's tools. The clean mattress has been reduced to nothing more than a bloody pad. No matter how much is done to remove the alcohol stain, it remains firmly in place. Thoughts of the child are also impossible to escape. Despite attempts to cover it up, the death pierces through every aspect of the apartment, unable to be swept under the rug. Pills rain from the sky, doing their best to support the wounded heart. Unfortunately, it doesn't change the fact that the young lady's world has come crashing down. With tears in her eyes, the girl is left to cope with the pain, ending part 2. Facing a much darker reality, the protagonist isn't looking too hopeful. With her future hanging in the balance, all that's left is part 3. The final track, Love Pills, opens with a fresh case of medication, quickly disappearing as the song starts. Looking a lot better this time around, the nameless girl has a more wistful expression than usual. Sadly, the reason for this is due to a more recent development. Matching the lyrics of the music, a single text is sent on the young woman's phone. It's clear that the couple has broken up, but the girl remains hopeful that they'll reunite at some point. Adding another message with more pills, the student is coping the only way she knows how. After this, a new set of items make an appearance. These include a container of red liquid, service bars, a Wi-Fi signal, a series of stamps, Pac-Man, and a brain. The question is, how do these things relate to the situation? Thinking endlessly about her circumstances, both parts of the girl's brain are at odds with each other. Forced through enough emotional trauma, it looks as though the logical side is fighting back now. As far as the service bars and Wi-Fi signal go, they most likely symbolize the student reaching out for help. With her arm literally becoming the signal bars, this couldn't be any more clear. Interestingly, she does this twice, but the second time shows the range lessening, indicating a sense of giving up. They also tie into the brain symbolism, with the logical side not only searching for answers, but pulling internal information in hopes of finding a solution to this crisis. The stamps are a trickier thing to analyze. Initially, they move in a sequence of 4 independent shapes. Matching them to English lettering doesn't yield any results, and if they're meant to be a crude representation of Japanese kanji, then this particular scene is lost on me. What comes after potentially alludes to multiple interpretations that relate to the other objects. We eventually see the stamps being stuck to the girl's body. Recalling the theme of reaching out, the visual may be showing that she wants to mail herself somewhere, either to be where her ex is, or anywhere but here. A previous commenter suggested another idea, with the imagery alluding to a darker means of coping. These stamps could also be seen as something else entirely. While pills are still seen throughout, they've started to appear in cases. There's also a dish used specifically to hold pills, as well as stamps. Given her self-destructive behavior on top of what she's been through, it's likely that the girl has been taking actual medication for a while now. That said, it's also possible that she's abused the prescription to deal with her emotional turmoil. The image of Pac-Man acts as a nice parallel, as the character is very well known for swallowing pills. This leaves a bottle of red liquid, potentially being a blood test to keep the student in check. In certain cases, a special type of patch is used as a medication replacement. Meant for people that need continuous relief, the stamps could in fact be these patches, painting a grim picture of addiction. There's an additional shot of the girl's brain showing the heavy dosage being tied to her emotional side, making things more difficult to let go. It isn't clear if this started happening before or after her boyfriend left, but it very well could have contributed to their breakup. The symbol of innocence scatters itself all around the screen, managing to come together after some effort. Falling apart again, the pieces now disappear from sight. Coming back to the girl's peaceful expression, it's now accompanied by a litany of sharp tools protruding from her back. Her feelings of being backstabbed are apparent, but in her case, it could also refer to the adage death by 1,000 cuts. The cracks begin to show during the next group of scenes. The blood spills, the girl's brain has been ejected, Pac-Man smashes himself into the floor, and one of the patches starts to leak, showing that it may also be acting as a bandage. Following another wave of self-abuse from different sources, the stamps appear as the next text response on the young woman's phone. Reciting the lyrics from the opening, the student holds on to her beating heart as it attempts to push away the lingering scars. Unfortunately, the denial can only last for so long, as the final sequence unleashes a torrent of emotion. Another group of items make an appearance, including a centipede, a container with different contents, hands, and a cat. The insects are most likely toxic thoughts finally coming to the surface. Crawling from the left side of her brain, the bugs carry an intense negativity with them. Drowning in despair, the centipedes emerge from inside the girl's body, as well as linger outside of it. The unfamiliar jar appears to house a different kind of drug, paired with what could be seen as alcohol. Occupying the pill dish, this concoction is her new way of coping. Tired of everything, odds are decent that the young woman is aiming for death. That said, the hands tell a slightly different story. Displaying a sign of anxiety, the gesture might show that she's still considering other options. Bringing Pac-Man back into the picture, one of the hands is shoving a finger down his throat. Regretting the action of swallowing the deadly mix, it's possible she decided to get it out of her system. This leaves the cat, shown in a few select shots. The first appearance shows it being stretched out, followed by it being smashed in a fridge during the second. I'd really like to say that this is metaphorical in some way, but the literal interpretation may represent a very cruel response to the overall stress. The earlier pill and alcohol mixture could have led to these unforgivable actions, though the entire sequence may also be an extreme fabrication, as her thoughts about the creature escape from her head a bit later. In any case, the young woman's mind is in a very bad place. Moving past this, the girl's body shows her filled to the brim with medication, regardless of which kind. At this point, the pain it's trying to heal is insurmountable. The symbol of innocence is managing to hold on, until it gets smashed to pieces by a tram. Left in shambles, it's expected that the object will pull itself together like every other time. Sadly, the pieces completely disappear, foreshadowing something much worse. Left on a shot of the girl's cell phone, it's more recently been dropped and cracked. Old text messages flood the screen, but the sender is long since vanished. The final scene hangs on a familiar pair of shoes. It's unclear where the girl went, but it's more than apparent that she isn't coming back. While only spanning about 7 minutes total, these 3 videos do an exceptional job exploring a tragic journey. It's easy enough to write content like this off as edgy, but I think it serves to acknowledge a reality that some people experience. Love can be a beautiful thing, but it can also be brutal to go through, especially if you're betrayed by your partner. One day, things can be great, and the next, they do or say something that cuts deep. Not everyone can handle the emotional shift that comes with those moments, and in some cases, end up hurting themselves as a result. Self-harm should never be an option, especially when you're doing the best you can in a difficult situation. Given how different all of our lives are, I don't know how qualified I am to give advice to anyone. That said, as someone who narrowly avoided checking out of life a few times, I'd like to try. To start, it's important to forgive yourself. You are not defined by your failures, or the issues that may get pushed onto you by another person. Taking the time to reflect and analyze yourself allows for a better understanding of what you truly want out of life. If love is one of those things, determine if you're ready for it. Figure out some reasonable baseline qualities that you'd like to see in someone, and don't compromise on that. Jumping into a relationship can work out, but if you're not careful, it can negatively affect your life. True happiness comes from within, and while being with someone else is nice, make sure that you're good before anything. Additionally, I think it's extremely important to seek out some form of positivity, whether that be an activity, a form of entertainment, or something social. The smallest thing can make a huge difference mentally. Working towards a goal you care about can redirect your focus, and also help a lot. It's possible to heal, even if you only take little steps each day. Self-medication is fine, but don't let it get out of control. There's never anything wrong with seeking help, and multiple resources are just one Google search away. Learn to value who you are, and don't push your feelings aside. Please take care of yourself, even if it's difficult. In the end, life carries on, so live the best life you can. Big thanks to my amazing literary club member, El Chuflo.